Good morning. It's Tuesday, and here's the deal. You win some, you lose some. So I'm going to start out with the fact that putting my cards on the table here. I'm not happy about two votes last night in the Senate. Okay, that's a fact. And I also think, and I'm going to tell you about them in a moment, law, money, and power. Let's start out with the law. I'm also going to tell you the fights are worth it because these things got slowed down. So let me start first with what shocks me the most. Charles Kushner, Jared's father, who you may know served time in prison for white collar criminal activity. I believe it included tax fraud. And there's something else a little gross about the story where he was also trying to shut up his brother-in-law. And so in terms of maybe cooperating or testifying against him, and if I'm remembering this accurately, he hired a woman of the night to seduce his brother-in-law. This is his sister's husband. Had a private detective part of this, obviously set up taking photographs and delivered those photographs to his sister as a threat, as a punishment for his cooperation. I'm not sure. Okay, that's who we're talking about. And as you may know, he was up for a ambassadorship. I believe, again, I don't follow all the details of all the prizes of ambassadorships because those are often patronage positions. I know that they're smart people. I think they're important. I think these ambassadors exercise soft power, create connections, and it makes sense that they are wealthy donors in some instances. I've also seen the show The Diplomat with Carrie Russell. I love that because it shows that there are some diplomats who are rougher around the edges. But in reality, we know that Charles Kushner was confirmed last night to become ambassador to France. And the thing that disappointed me last night is that there was one Democrat who voted for Charles Kushner, and that was Cory Booker. I don't get it. My understanding from looking into it last night, because I was curious why Cory Booker voted for Charles Kushner, no other Democrats did. And also, it turns out that Lisa Murkowski, Republican senator from Alaska, did not vote for him. And it's not for me just that he is a white-collar criminal. Because I do believe that if people change and serve their time, they can reform and so on. But I'm not sure that ambassador is the right reward to give someone who was also pardoned by the existing president. Yes, Donald Trump pardoned him. What message does that send to folks abroad? Secondly, it was the nature in which he behaved. I don't trust somebody who is going to play those kinds of blackmail type games. Thirdly, he's literally the in-law of the president of the United States, the father-in-law of the president's daughter. Why in the world would you give another Kushner a position of power? And so what I saw was apparently Cory Booker had been called out in a positive way when Charles Kushner was actually at his Senate confirmation hearings, thanking his friend, longtime friend Cory Booker. Now, the only thing I can think of is as follows. Charles Kushner is a New Jersey resident. And as you may remember, he was prosecuted by then U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Chris Christie. So there's a lot of New Jersey ties there. Cory Booker is a senator from New Jersey. So maybe they truly are friends. And this goes back. And his vote wasn't a decisive vote. It was 51 to, I want to say it was like 51 to maybe 40 48 or 46. Not all the Republicans voted, it seemed, when I looked at the tally. But nevertheless, I was so distraught when I saw that, so disappointed. Was it really worth it? Was it really worth it to cast that vote? He could have said to Charlie Kushner, listen, man, I just did this major marathon on the floor of the Senate, and I don't want to do anything to tarnish that. I'm trying to build a coalition, and more than anything, we need to bring Democrats together. So I'm not going to vote for you unless it's the deciding vote. And he could have waited to the very end to see if the votes were there. But no, he went in right there. Wasn't even at the end. I didn't see that, the actual how it went down, but he did not have to vote for Kushner. He even voted for him for the cloture vote, which he didn't have to do either. So where does this leave me? Grief is a thing to process. I'm not okay with Booker's vote, not because I'm a purist, but because I'm a realist. He didn't need to cast that vote. And I see that it makes it really, for me, as someone who focuses on white collar crime, makes me quite uncomfortable. It puts a footnote for me now on his floor speech. It does. And I guess all I can say is that he understood that. And maybe he chose friendship, or maybe huge campaign contributions. And he's up for reelection. And maybe that was just, he's up for reelection in 2026 and he wants his war chest, or he wants to run for president and he thinks this will be forgotten. I don't know, man. I don't know. But where it goes for me mostly is, this is what I told you when I wrote the book, Big Dirty Money, that cheaters do prosper. If you're rich enough and you're well connected enough, it's like a speeding ticket. Now, I got another thing to get off my chest before I get to this, right? Now, get to the main topic, which is Donald Trump the picture of health or not? Because he certainly is throwing a lot of stones from his glass house. The second thing that happened last night was that there was a showdown behind the scenes in the Senate between Kristen Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren. And it looks like Gillibrand won, to all of our detriment, in that so-called Genius Act actually got over the 60 vote hump. In other words, the cloture vote happened, and now it will be able to go to a full up or down vote in the Senate. And it wasn't like just a couple of Democrats to get this squeaked over the line. There were 16 of them who supported this bill. And I need to lay this out for you. I know we had Corey Frayer here last week. And I've done a lot of thinking since my disappointment. These votes were back to back yesterday. And there was a moment, you guys, I was messaging with Corey, but there was this moment last night where I'm checking in on C-SPAN. Actually, I actually watched the direct link on the Senate's website, because if you watch C-SPAN, it was so weird. There was a split screen. I'm watching the Senate floor and you don't hear anything unless someone votes and they call their name out. So right next to it on C-SPAN, on the split screen on my C-SPAN app, they had also had something going on from earlier in the day in the White House, and it was Karen Leavitt talking. I'm like, I can't do this. So I went directly to this Senate's feed, floor feed. And these were back to back. And one thing, so, I was so distraught after the Cory Booker vote that I took a little time out and I went back to grading, finishing grading my exams. And then I checked back in on the Senate floor, and it was like, holy shit, it's already up at 60 for this cloture vote on the Genius Act, this act that would bring cryptocurrency, specifically stablecoin, into the protection of the federal banking system without adequate controls on the activity and without stopping Donald Trump and his family from profiting. That part we didn't think would happen. Now, I want you to know that before Corey came on the show, let me just back up. This vote had already gone to the floor for cloture votes twice and had lost. If it had lost last night, there was going to be a break. This might actually die. It was a shock. I was convinced when I first spoke with you about this stablecoin bill that it would get through because industries wanted it, including the mutual fund industry, which was probably going to try to do their best to make a cleaner coin than most, and that would be easier to run than their or something they could do alongside money market funds. I just thought this was going to happen. So I kind of got my hope up after it didn't get through the cloture vote twice. Well, last night there was a moment. I look on the Senate floor and I'm like, holy shit, they're already at 60. Damn it. And then, I don't know, within 20 minutes, it went down to 59 because apparently one of the Democrats withdrew his vote. So then I was thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then I looked at the photo, watching the live feed from the Senate floor, and I see Elizabeth Warren standing there. At first, I just see her on her phone, looking at her phone at one point, but I saw her standing there by the place where you would have to come vote if you were a Democrat on this bill. Now, by that point, though, it seemed to me like there were still Republican votes that had not come in. And so then a Republican senator voted and we were back up to 60. So at that point, there was a real question for me whether Elizabeth Warren could cajole and encourage some of the Democrats that were in the camp of Kristen Gillibrand, the sponsor of this terrible bill, convince them, don't do it. Just this one more time. You don't have to vote for this. But at the end of the day, it got through. And it got through with 16 senators. Now, I'm not putting their names up here right now to shame them. That is not my point. But I want to make clear to you, you might say, because I tried to dig around in my mind to justify this. One justification was they thought this bill was going to go through anyway, somehow. I don't know how that is because there aren't 60 senators, but I think, so that was one thought, no. And the second thought was, oh, I bet some of these senators are up for reelection in 2026. And they're scared out of their minds that a shit ton of crypto money will come after them, just like it did to Sherrod Brown. And that is the reason why gazillion dollars poured into Ohio and why he lost the race to Moreno. So I can understand that. I'm not justifying it. So I actually looked at the names. You see how I do my hypothesis testing here. I'm judgy, but I decide to step back from my judgment and try to understand better. And when I looked at those 16 names, only 4 of those names of the 16, only 4 actually are up for reelection in 2026. And then 1 is Gillibrand, the sponsor. So even if only 5 of them voted for this bill, it would have not gone through. So what's the real story here? The real story is 2 new members of the Senate and other new members of the Senate, like Lisa Blunt Rochester, who is now on Senate banking. They're on this committee and passed this bill through the committee. And there is another, Angela also Brooks. Amazing people. So glad they're senators. They voted for this bill. They're not up for reelection for quite some time, right? They're in the class of senators who does not have to run for another 6 years. But why would they support this, both on the committee and the Senate at large? They know. They're smart women. They know what this bill would do. They have, I'm certain, been briefed and heard, and were listening carefully. So what do they and others who are not up for reelection, why are they supporting this bill? Well, you put young people, new senators, on the Senate Banking Committee. Chuck Schumer put people, so Elizabeth Warren is now chairing Senate Banking because guess who is no longer? Sherrod Brown. He was the chair. So getting him out of the Senate got him out of the chair position. Being the senior senator, Warren's on the committee. So now Schumer has put people on the committee who don't have a history of fighting Wall Street. They may have it in them, but they don't have that history. And when you put young senators on Senate Banking or young members of the House on House Financial Services, this is the biggest fundraising haul you can get. And we've known this. And I'm going to explain this, not condoning it, judging, but explaining how politics works now. So this is the game the Democrats also have to play, they believe. So obviously campaigns can only take in so much money. So all the senators on, Senate banking who voted for this bill, or the senators on the floor, when you get 16 people voting for something, you only needed 4 and maybe the sponsor. Why are those other 11 people doing it? It's not just their campaigns that give money. Now the big crypto can give a big thank you to Chuck Schumer and all the Democrats. I'm not saying it's a quid pro quo. I'm saying now they're not as afraid. And big money can come into the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. And now this bill has to go also to the House after it actually gets through the full Senate. So I'm explaining to you that money talks, and crypto money is the biggest money, and it talks. So just as the piggish Donald Trump family is gobbling up crypto cash in the most obvious way, we on our own side are doing something similar. Not something as garish, not something as contemptible. It's not foreign money pouring in to their pockets. But money is power in this society, and this is what happened. And I am disappointed, mostly because at the end of the day, the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer. And on the other hand, at the end of the day, where we are in our society is we live in a kleptocracy. And the question is whether we just want an oligarchy and not as much of a kleptocracy, or let me say it differently. They always talk about monarchies, that could be good if it's a benign monarch, but you don't always get a benign monarch. So what's going on here is, would you rather have Democrats that share more of your values, but whose leadership right now recognizes, whether corruptly or honestly, that they need the big cash guns not aimed at them, but feeding their campaigns? If they're recognizing that, who would you rather have in power? Democrats who've had to bow to Wall Street, or the Republicans who had? And I know my answer. My answer is I'm still going to vote for the Democrats. I recognize the realpolitik. I recognize the reality of how money corrupts, and I'm not a fool about it. But does that mean I'm going to support their actions? Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, this is a huge watershed. This is the moment when I write another edition one day of Other People's Houses, or write a new book about the crypto crash, that we will trace back to that moment. And I now know better and understand better the forces at work. But that is what I have for you. Whew. So I've gotten that off my chest. I didn't know how I was going to talk about that with you this morning, because it was a lot last night around 9 or 10 o'clock, as I was preparing for the show, filled with joy about the day. It was a great day for other reasons. And then reality rushed in. Okay. So that is politics. But it also was the intersection of money, law, and power, because that's what we do here. So let's continue on the theme. Let's continue on this theme, and we're going to get to Donald Trump and his picture of health in a moment. Let's talk about money. Yesterday, Donald Trump, looking extremely orange, spoke outside at what appears to be in front of the Oval Office, and what appeared to used to be the Rose Garden. I think it's been paved over with stones. And he said something unusual. Can we take a listen here?
Because there's no place like the White House, I found out. You have a lot of places, and I just left some of the richest places, and we loved them, and they gave us a nice contribution of about $5 trillion, but this is a special place. Even they talk about it, so it's great.
I'm what? A contribution of $5 trillion gave us. I just need to understand that a little better. Who gave us a contribution of $5 trillion. And am I crazy to think that that is like, is that all being paid all at once? Or is that in installments? As Aaron Rupert pointed out, the entire GDP, our gross domestic product of the United States, is under 30 trillion. So it's hard to understand this. I just need to hear this again. Will you please listen?
Because there's no place like the White House, I found out. You know, you have a lot of places, and I just left some of the richest places, and we loved them, and they gave us a nice contribution of about $5 trillion, but this is a...
I see what he's trying to say here. He's trying to say all the deals he did for the United States, the sales that U.S. companies made totaled to $5 trillion. Friends, that math ain't mathing. And speaking of money, and speaking of what Donald Trump collected on his little tour of the beautiful rich places in the world, right? Is everybody wealthy in the countries he went to? Just meeting with the rich folks, not really interested in the people. Okay, so let's listen to a conversation with Caitlin Collins and Rounds. I think he is Mike Rounds, the senator, about Donald Trump taking this $400 million plane from Qatar. That we understand, as the Chiron says, Donald Trump was actually begging to get this. He wanted it so bad. Okay, let's listen.
Comfortable with the president flying on a plane that was gifted to him by Qatar?
If the question is, can he legally accept it?
No, I'm just
okay.
ethically and optically, are you comfortable with that?
If we can show the American people that there was a method and a reason why it is beneficial in terms of this transition, I think that'll help a lot. And I think there may very well be an argument made that as we transition from the old 747s, which are still in service, to the new 747s, there's a number of items that have to be included in each of the 747s. If we can build some of that and then transition it out of one 747 and then into the new one, there may very well be some benefits to that while the old 747s are still flying. So we've had a chance to talk to some of the folks in the Air Force, and the Air Force actually does have a plan to be able to work through this. Now, I'm not going to get into it because a lot of it's still classified, but there is a logic that a lot of people aren't talking about yet, and I probably shouldn't be breaking that story.
Interesting that you did talk to the Air Force, though. When you are ready to break it, let us know. Senator Mike Rounds, thank you for your time.
Okay. Do you see what's going on there? It's like, okay, let's try to retrofit. Let's try to backfill a justification for the hole that he's dug himself into. Mike Rounds didn't say he's heard one. Mike Rounds is literally talking about the sausage factory here, telling, that whole thing, you don't want to watch legislation be made any more than you want to, see how sausage is made. Well, this is the same kind of deal. It's real ugly what they're trying to come up with. He's basically saying it doesn't sound like a great idea to me, but if it can be justified that the president needs this and it would be good for the Air Force, and if the American people can hear that justification, it's fine. Okay, but that justification is being worked out now, well after the fact. Okay, so let's continue. Let's continue on money. We have Carolyn Leavitt, White House press secretary, just in her little beautiful buttercup suit. It's kind of sweet. You got to see it. And batting her eyelashes and lying, just lying. I mean, my God, what a fabulous role to take in a movie, The Evil Carolyn Leavitt. But in real life, which is not a film, when you lie to people, it corrodes your soul. And maybe that doesn't matter much to her. She is a piece of work. Let's listen here.
Is the president okay with this bill adding to the deficit?
This bill does not add to the deficit. In fact, according to the Council of Economic Advisors.
Okay. The Council of Economic Advisors works for the president. This bill adds to the deficit. There we go. You've had enough of her. Now, let's now talk about the terrible, big, beautiful bill, because that is still happening, right? This bill that she says doesn't add to the deficit, it does. And let's talk about why it's happening again, to make sure that tax cuts can be extended to the billionaires, the 100 millionaires, and corporations. And the way that is going to work, they're literally explicitly saying, in order to make this get scored right, in order for this not to add to the deficit, even though it's not successful doing that, they need to cut close to $800 million from Medicaid. We've heard this. And so the emphasis has been, and we've talked about this too, they're going to cut Medicaid, which is insurance that more than 40% of children rely on, huge numbers of pregnant women rely on, and tons of full-time working people rely on. I've showed you that picture, and I'm going to show it to you again, that chart. And so again and again, the talking point is something that sounds super reasonable, that people, if you're able-bodied and you want, and you can work and there are jobs available, you should be out working in order to get Medicaid from the government. And that makes sense. Yeah, that is actually what's happening. And the way, though, they're going to implement the so-called work requirements and the other things they're going to implement is going to cut Medicaid for all the people who are not actually able-bodied or able to find work, or who are working part-time but are not meeting whatever paperwork requirement or quotas. So I'm going to play for you this, and you're going to listen to the language, and then we're going to look at the chart again.
Well, I was supportive of work requirements when we had the Limit, Save, Grow bill back when I was in Congress a couple of years ago. I think it's better for people who need assistance to also be encouraged and incentivized to work. And, you know, as a general proposition, Limit, Save, Grow.
Sorry, this is the director of the Office of Management and Budget. I'll continue.
Bill back when I was in Congress a couple of years ago. I think it's better for people who need assistance to also be encouraged and incentivized to work. And, you know, as a general proposition, President Trump has made clear we're going to try to end waste, fraud, and abuse. People who are not working or illegals who are receiving benefits from Medicaid, for example.
Okay, guys, this is a crock. This is absolutely a crock. This idea that people who, in the so-called, you calling a person illegal, we have people who are here who are undocumented or who have temporary protected status or who have had their hearings and are applying for asylum or what have you, hundreds of billions of dollars. I forgot what the actual number is that they pay into taxes, right? And they're not getting things like Social Security. Let's see. So in the United States, undocumented people, what is the number? I'm sorry. Undocumented immigrants, and this was in 2022, paid $96.7 billion, close to $100 billion between federal, state, and local taxes. And that was in 2022. So, yeah, that is happening too. So there's this idea that some people, you know, we're going back to the makers and the takers. And so let's take a look again at that slide. I think it's critical for us to remember. This is, I'm going to blow this up for you. This is showing you this big pie chart, work status and barriers to work among Medicaid adults 2023. So this pie chart, the total amount here is showing you Medicaid covered adults aged 19 to 64 who do not receive benefits from SSI. So this is the entire population, this total here, 26.1 million people who are between the ages of 19 and 64, and they're not getting supplementary security income, SSI, and they're not getting SSDI, Social Security Disability Income, and they're not covered by Medicare. Okay, that's why they're between 19 and 64. So let's look. 44% are working full-time and 20% are working part-time. What is that? That adds up to 64%. What about not working due to caregiving? That's a hell of a lot of work. What is caregiving? I don't know. Paying for taking care of children, taking care of adults, taking care of family members. That gets us up to 44 and 20, 64, 74, 76%. More than 3/4 of the people are actually working, either in the public workforce or that 12% of them at home. Okay. And again, in this 19 to 64, we've got 10% who cannot work due to illness or disability. Now we're getting to 84%. Now we're over 90%. We're, into over 91% when we get to not working because they're in school. Last time I checked, school is work. Remember, age 19, I said 18, but it's 19 to 64. There are people who are in college, in trade school, trying to get an education. And so they are sometimes getting Medicaid because they need health insurance coverage. So what is the number? We've got 92% are either actually working, either in the public sphere or a small number at home. We've got 10% who are actually disabled, some in school, but only 8% are not working because either they can't find work, they've actually already retired, or some other reason, because some people retire before 65 because, I don't know, last time I checked, there is discrimination in the workforce. And if you're unemployed after the age of 50, it can be very difficult to find employment. And also, there are a lot of health issues that people face that make it hard for them to physically go to work. So that's it. We're not talking about a huge swath of people. And so they are scapegoating an imaginary small class of people who they claim are just sitting around collecting Medicaid, right? And not working. Now, when you look at that chart, who are these people working full time and on Medicaid or part time and on Medicaid, right? What is that number? More than it was something like a total of 64% of the people. Guess what, guys? There are jobs when they pay minimum wage, even if you're working full time. There are jobs that don't provide health insurance in some places. And it's easier to be Medicaid than maybe the Affordable Care Act buy-in system. Plus, there are a lot of places that keep you under 40 hours a week, under the threshold to be full-time. And therefore, you don't get insurance at all anyway. So this stuff is, if we had, this is the story with this. And there are employers who you could require them to provide health insurance for all employees. That's not what they are doing. Okay, now speaking of telling employers what to do, let's move again now into, we're still in money, the intersection now of money and law and power, I guess. We don't have a government who is saying all employers need to provide insurance, right? They're not saying that. They're not doing Medicare for all. In fact, they're trying to cut back on government programs providing for health care for all. So what is the story here? What is the story here about pressure on private companies? Is it that the Trump administration is the classic, hands off the private sector? Oh no, my friends. Donald Trump is losing his shit. We talked about this a bit, I think it was yesterday. He is pissed off that at the call for analysts on Friday that Walmart had after finishing its first quarter, that the CEO said, I'm going to have to pass some of these costs along to consumers. Well, he flipped the fuck out and he said on his True Social, Walmart has to eat these costs, eat the tariffs, basically. Now, so let's just back up because I know we said this a million times. A tariff is an import tax paid by the importer of goods that come in from overseas. What are those that are sold into the country? So Walmart is a massive importer of goods that are made in China, for example, right? And Walmart has to pay the tariffs. That's how it works. Donald Trump keeps saying the tariffs are paid by the foreign countries. Nope. And what is Walmart going to do? Well, it has a choice. It can keep its everyday low prices everyday low, or it can raise those prices so that it doesn't have to absorb the cost of that tariff. That's how it works. The other thing that can happen is if you are selling something, let's say you're a Chinese manufacturer, what you sell it to Walmart for, of course, has a markup. So it may cost you, let's say it costs you, I'll just pick a number, $50 to actually complete an infant car seat. Let's say pick another number. I'm just going to make up $25 to make this car seat. And let's say the markup you charge is 100%. So you charge Walmart 50% at the border, right? The tariff on that would be on the you charge $50 at the border. So 25% is what it costs you to make it. You charge Walmart $50. Walmart's going to be paying the tariff on the $50, right? So then Walmart is going to go, okay, that tariff is a lot higher than I thought. Let's say the tariff was something, I know they keep changing it around. Now it's 30%, but let's say it was back to when it was, I don't even know what the Chinese tariffs are anymore. I think it's 30, but let's say it was back when it was 100%. What is that going to mean? It's going to have to, if if Walmart is paying the U.S. government on a $50 product, it's buying a $50 tariff. Now it's spent $100 on that. So Walmart is looking around at what it can sell this for. If Walmart used to sell that car seat for $100, it can't sell it for that. It's got to sell it for more, right? If it used to sell the car seat for $125, it still probably has to mark it up. So that's the story of how it works. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary was like, oh, I think these companies can eat the cost. So let me show you where that cost could have been eaten, right? So if it was made for $25, that car seat, and I guess he's thinking instead of charging $50, they could charge less, right? Maybe they charge, I don't know, $45, but you're still in the same boat. Then Walmart's paying $45 tariff, and then it's a $90 car seat instead of if there wasn't a tariff, a $45 car seat. At some point, that cost gets passed on to the consumer. But the bottom line is Donald Trump lied and continues to lie. Tariffs are absolutely import taxes paid by the company that imports the goods. There's no question. The only question is who feels that tax, who actually, people use the word pay. Tax experts call it, what is the incidence? Really, that's it, incidence. Like incident, but incidence. The tax incidence is who is feeling it at the end of the day, who's absorbing that. And at the end of the day, Walmart is saying our customers are going to absorb Donald Trump's tariffs. So what does that look like? Donald Trump doesn't fucking like it. And so his goons are basically suggesting that they're threatening Walmart not to pass the costs along. Let's listen to this on, I think it's CNBC.
You are a merchant in the United States.
Somehow I had given you that chart. Let's remove it and let's play this. Okay, this is Andrew Ross Sorkin, and let's go.
You are a merchant in the United States. Do you pass on the costs or not? You saw what the president had to say yesterday to Walmart.
Well, I think that assumes that tariffs all go up. And in certain circumstances, just use the car example I give you, perhaps they come down. But to the extent there is an increase, you've got the producer, you've got the shipper, you've got the middleman, the retailer, and you've got the consumer. All of them may bear some of that. But it's not a certainty to me at all that that's where we're going to head. We could head to lower tariffs around the board.
You think ultimately, no, but I'm saying in the short term right now.
Oh, I understand. In the short term, I think.
In the short term, if Walmart decides that they have to raise their prices, do you think that that's un-American effectively?
I think Walmart's going to have to make this decision, but Walmart has the broadest base of American clients there is, and I think they're going to be very careful about how they do this. I know that they've received some criticism from the president. I think they need to think hard. Also, the president's been, and should, they should know, the president's been working very hard with China to make sure we get this thing addressed as quickly as possible.
Okay, they better think hard. Well, that doesn't sound so bullying, but if you think about it in the context of Bill Hagerty being a Republican, saying a company better think hard. Did you hear him showing you across that supply chain the different places he claimed the tax could be absorbed? The reality, it's a fucking tax. And Donald Trump continues to lie and to try to get everyone else to pay the price for his idiocy. And okay, I got to address this thing. Bill Hagerty said, well, the tariffs may come down. Okay, dude, what's the baseline then? If you started here, and this was what people plan for in terms of tariffs. These are the importers, right? The US businesses. And you raise them up to here, and then you go here. That's not lowering them from the baseline of what they budgeted for the fucking year. Oops, I'm trying not to swear. From the flipping year, you cad. See, I'm improving my vocabulary. But it's not so simple. Donald Trump, while he has everyone else madly trying to justify and backfill for his behavior and tell different stories about why it's not so bad and how tariffs might come down and how they've got all these deals. He's at the White House yesterday, indoors this time, talking about tariffs all over the map. These numbers I have not heard of. Okay, let's listen.
Years they were taking advantage of us. We never did anything. But now we're doing it to them and fairly, I'll tell you what, modestly. But we'll be taking, and we are taking in right now, 25% in cars, 25% on steel and aluminum, 25% on other things, and that'll be going up to 50, 75, maybe 100 in some cases. We got to get our pharmaceutical industry back.
100 again. He's back to that.
Establish that in another couple of weeks, it'll start roaring back. It's already roaring back because they know we're doing it. And
nothing's roaring back. And this is like literally the same day. This is happening. This chaos. This is not strategic uncertainty as a negotiating tool. That Besant said. It's not helpful. I think he's out of his mind. And let me say it differently. I think he has some kind of dementia. I'm not a doctor, but having been around elderly people who sometimes don't remember things. And it's very painful. And I don't look forward to the day when I'm in a space where I'm not remembering things. And either my short-term memory is entirely shot, or I just don't remember what I did or what I said or where I put something. But I'll tell you, I won't do to my kids, the people around me, the shit that he's doing to the country. I would not be in a position of authority if I didn't remember things. And of course, you want to run your own life. So I would create scaffolding where I'd write things down. Or if my family member, who I trusted, and I only surround myself with people like that, told me, you already paid that bill, and they showed me that I already paid a bill twice, I would say, maybe it's time for you to take over the checkbook. Well, friends, Donald Trump is well beyond the time that someone should have taken over the checkbook from him and the entire budget from him. This man it reminds me of Ronald Reagan, who, when reports back about his Alzheimer's, the things that he remembered fondly was when he was going back to the time when he was very happy, and he'd think about and remember being a lifeguard. And that's a beautiful thing. This is the cycle of life. Okay? Let Donald Trump be the little boy he wants to be. Give him the fucking $400 million plane. Let him go stay at Mar-a-Lago. Enough of being president. Now, he's, of course, lucid enough, that he knows what job he has, but there's no way he's going to let go of anything or admit that he doesn't know what's going on. That is the fact. And so let me put this in other words. Because now we're going to shift. We're talking about money now. Let's talk about power. Let's talk about the war that Russia has been waging for years in Ukraine. And let's talk about the entire clown show of the administration. And for this, I want to first share with you James Comey, who is now making the rounds on the talk shows because he really needs to gain public support at this point as he is facing potential indictment for taking a photo of a shell formation on the beach. Let's play it.
Worry that the last time you were sort of harassed, people like Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein were there, and now it's Pam Bondi plus basically everyone who's defended Donald Trump in a criminal context over the last 4 years.
Yes, a very different crew. The last group had people who were flexible but had some institutionalist principles. They all ran for the hills, as you would expect after January 6th. And now it's Four Seasons total landscaping all the way down. So it's, you don't.
Oh my God, did you hear him? And now it's Four Seasons total landscaping all the way down. Oh my God, let's continue to listen. And by the way, I think you remember the Four Season total landscaping fiasco when Rudy Giuliani wanted to hold a press conference to distract people from whatever the chaos of the day was. And I think this was after, I'm guessing this was after Donald Trump lost the election and they were trying to whip up stories about how he had won, which wasn't true. And so he wanted to hold a press conference. And I think he told his team to hold that. And of course, remember, Giuliani didn't have an official role, but he was certainly a surrogate for Donald Trump. And he wanted to hold a press conference at a Four Seasons hotel in Philadelphia. But someone on his team, the front man, made the reservation at the Four Seasons total landscaping outside of Philadelphia. And they ended up keeping the arrangement. Okay, let's continue with Comey.
Don't have people who are interested in standing up for institutional values. They work for the president, and that's concerning. It's actually short-sighted for a president to have people around him like that, because he can't look to an institution if the American people start worrying about a set of facts and say they'll handle it in a fair way, because he's made clear now they're all his people.
Do you worry that his people will not treat you fairly now that you're under scrutiny?
Sure, but we live in a reality-based world.
I liked how he, sorry guys, I liked how he ended that. When Nicole Wallace asked him, is he worried that he'll be mistreated? He said, sure, but we live in a reality-based world. Okay. I do hope that is the case. I do think they're just making a big deal and trying to punish him. I don't think James Comey is going to be prosecuted, but they're going to make hay of it while the sun shines. Now, I got one more thing for you before we get to Crazy Town, and that is Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump had a phone call with Vlad, and he thinks it went really well, but he got totally played. Donald Trump, apparently, according to private disclosures in the news, is frustrated with Putin because he thinks Putin doesn't actually want a ceasefire or want to come up with any kind of deal. And it turns out that's correct. And this is, I want to share with you, Senator Tommy Tuberville claiming that it's going to all work out. I don't think so, you guys. But let's listen to, from Tuberville, a window into the thinking in the administration on the war in Ukraine.
Vladimir Putin now is gone. He's to the point where he's taken so much land, he's making so much progress. Why would he make a deal? He has got the cards in his hand. Biden had the cards in his hand very early, but now we've lost all the cards. And Vladimir Putin is going to want a lot from the Ukrainians. He's going to want a lot in terms of land, the things that are going on there in terms of possibly even Odessa. He's going to want Crimea, but he's going to want NATO to stay away from his borders. And I can't blame him for that. 100%, we don't need to be on their borders, and he's asked that for years.
So
now,
but Vladimir Putin.
Sorry, Tuberville doesn't like Putin, and though he says I can't blame him for not wanting NATO on his borders. Okay, but he deserves to have NATO on his borders after what he has done. Nevertheless, what Tuberville is saying right here is Donald Trump is mistaken if he thinks that Putin is going to give up the land he's unlawfully taken. We are in the soup right now. And I think Donald Trump is going to find out the hard way if he keeps pushing back on Putin, that he's going to get pushback from Russia. So keep your eyes on that. And now, before we get to crazy time, let's talk about there we go. Let's talk about the story of the day. Donald Trump, does he look like the picture of health? No, he does not. And the deal is that I think health should not be a weapon. We all struggle, and some of us just cannot be healthy for whatever reason. It could be we're sick, and we should not shame people who are sick. It's difficult to be in a world with disease and all these other things that interfere with our physical and mental well-being. We can talk about what we like to talk about here, which is PRISM. And let me pull that up for you. You know, we are all striving toward, it's a journey, physical health, relational health, intellectual health, spiritual health, and mental health. We're striving toward that. We're not judging ourselves when we cannot achieve it. And so let's take a look now at Donald Trump using health as a weapon, attacking Joe Biden for having prostate cancer, and actually inconceivably thinking that there is something called stage 9 cancer. There is no such thing. Goes up to stage 4.
Respond to President Biden being diagnosed with cancer. Are you going to call your predecessor?
I think it's very sad, actually. I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time. I just had my physical. You saw that. You saw the results of that particular test. I think that test is standard to pretty much anybody getting a physical, good physical. We had the doctors at the White House and over at Walter Reed, which is a fantastic hospital. I did a very complete physical, including cognitive tests. I'm proud to announce I aced it. Got them all. I got them all right. You proud of me? Yes. Your husband would be proud of me for getting them all right. It's a little risk. If I didn't get them all right, these people would be after me. It would be not a good situation. But I think, frankly, anybody running for president should take a cognitive test. They say it's
Okay. Yeah. Anyone running for president should take a cognitive test. Yeah. Okay, Donald. There is no such thing as stage 5 cancer. He's getting something conflated about the numbers associated with the particular prostate cancer score, first of all. Second of all, what a terrible man to suggest that Biden was hiding a medical condition. As you may remember, I don't know if you remember, Donald Trump had that crazy hippie looking doctor in New York who, nothing wrong with hippies, but who apparently the letter that he signed about Donald Trump's health was like drafted in the limo, and then he just signed it. And I think he's no longer with us. But then we also heard the story from one of the books that I've read about Donald Trump that some thugs went in and raided the office where Donald Trump's actual medical records are. So if you actually think that we're getting a full story of Donald Trump's health, I don't think so. He is not the picture of health in any form, and he is not helping us in our society. And not only that, how he boasts about how he gets free medical care from Walter Reed at the same time that he is ripping away medical care from millions of Americans. He doesn't even see the irony. He's not grateful about the research, for example, that went into saving him when he had COVID. All that funding is being pulled away for others, not for him in the future, because he will still end up with the best treatment, because that's what money in power buys for you. So now let us do crazy town, guys. crazy town. We haven't seen him in a while. It's Pete Hegseth. Remember him? Pete Hegseth or Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense. Haven't seen him in a while. Not ever since he started the Signal Gate, when it turns out he's sharing all manner of military secrets, including an imminent bombing with a Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, plus that he's, has a private line that he goes around the security clearances to engage in things like sports, like some sports betting website or something like that. And he's got Signal hooked up to his computer and bypassing all the controls at the Pentagon, right? We could continue we haven't heard from him ever since those 3 jets fell off the aircraft carriers, and also not hearing much from him in other regards. So here we have him actually making an appearance. Irony has died. Let's play it.
We give to the plans we discuss. There's a reason why our nation's most closely held secrets are contained in certain places with only access from certain people. Nobody takes that more seriously than me. If there's one thing I've sort of been offended by, I don't get offended by much. I'm here to do my job for the president, for the country, is this idea that I don't take classification or I don't take clearances seriously. Nobody takes it more seriously than me. And we make sure that's infused through how we operate. And we do everything we can to deliver on behalf of the American people that way.
All right, Secretary.
No one takes it more seriously than me. I can't think of hyperbole stronger than that. I'm astonished that these people are just playing dress up. It's like just look at this guy. Let's look at this guy for a second. Just look at him. Doesn't he look like a little boy in a suit? He looks like there he is. Look at that smug look. This man looks like he's been cast in the part of Secretary of Defense, or he's the understudy. And they just put him up on stage or on camera to screen test him. And you would say, no, that's not credible. You would say that's too cartoonish. But there you have it. No one takes it more seriously than I do, he says, wearing a blue suit and a red tie, like the president. My friends, that is what I have for you today. Have a great Tuesday. Hopefully I'll have better news about the Democrats holding the line tomorrow. But until then, hope springs eternal.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub show where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub show.